I would like to introduce another Carey School alumni, Ray Baird, and his Panther Points of Pride video.
My name's Ray Baird. I graduated from Carey High School, 1944. Well, until I was 12 years old, I lived out at Fish Creek. That was our ranch there, and when we were in the sheep business. And you can't believe how close I was to your dad and mother. I look back on the Peck family as more like family than friends. Ronald was a year older than I was. Ross was a year younger. And I and Ross went to the same class, and we rode the school bus to school. First, we went to school out in Austin. They had a little, and that's out there. There's an old school there. And then when they got the school bus, they had an old truck with a top on it, and we went on the school bus. I and your dad and Ross and Almy, we did a lot of things together. We had a place that we called Monkey Burrow up on the hill there above us, and it was built out of just a kind of a shelter, built out of flat rocks up there. It's still there. And in the wintertime, we'd go up on the hill, the Manual Hill, we called it, and toboggan. And, well, I could go on forever about the things we did with your family. And of course, I and Ross was best of friends all our life there. And we came into school pretty primitive. There for a while, us Fish Creek kids kind of had to fight our way in and fight our way out and in the school. So, and then we moved into Carey on the ranch that Bigham's had up by Peekaboo Hill. And we lived there all during our high school days. And a few times we walked to school, but most of the time we rode horses. And it had a little barn out behind the school, about where the tennis court is. There was a barn. And John Turnbull, who used to live right here, and Boyd Barton, and
Dwayne? Dwayne?
Dwayne Barnes was, but we would rode the horses quite a bit, and they had a place to put them in. And then the school bus come out of Wood River, brought the kids, and there was a team on the winter. They had a team of sleigh with a kind of a camp wagon type over to pick up the kids to come to school. And we always seemed to have lots of snow back then, hard winters. But and they brought some of the older schools in to this school made different rooms. And Ronald was on the first football team that they ever had. And we went right out about where the football field is now, but it was nothing but cobble rocks. And we raked the cobble rocks off and played football right out in the dirt there. And your dad was a good ball player, and so was Ross. Jack York, his dad was a principal of the school for a while. And his brother-in-law was our coach, Jack's brother-in-law. But I run around with Mont Bennett and your dad a lot. That's where I bet Carly was going with them after the war. But there was a guy by the name of Professor Larkins, and taught school here, and he was a tough one. He didn't believe in sparing the rod and sparing the child, but he was a good teacher. And I think he's probably one of my favorites. Mrs. Billingsley was a real good teacher. They used to live here. And so we did lots of hunting. Hunted rabbits, and then they had a bounty on crows and magpies, and in the spring we would go out and do a lot of hunting. And of course, I always had cows to herd, and chores to do, and lots of chores. That was earlier days, going to school, in the early part of high school. I might tell you one story that Jack York was living there, and he had a project for hogs. He'd raised some hogs. So my mother would give me an excuse to take one of his old sows to the boar down South Carey. And so we took advantage of it, of course, and did quite a bit of pheasant hunting. It was great pheasant hunting back then. And his dad, or his brother rather, was the principal of the school. And he warned us, he says, I'm a farm boy too, and I think you're taking advantage of that. Jack says, oh no, I'm not. So it happened one more time. We decided we needed to go pheasant hunting. And he had an old Chevy car with a square back, two-seater, and he'd take that old sow and put her right there in the back seat. And we come to school the next morning, and he said, well, he just wanted the principal's office. So we went in, and Wayne, the principal, said, well, I had warned you boys. And he says, bend over and grab your ankles. And he had a board about that long and about that thick. It had holes drilled in it. And he gave us each 3 spots. And I don't mean he lifted us up And I never forget the feeling of went back to study hall and I sat down and it just felt like I was sitting down on pins and needles. So we wasn't getting away with much. Jack had a pretty hard time because his brother was the principal and his brother-in-law was the coach. and Mr. Latham, well, like I say, football was real new and basketball. And then we played baseball quite a bit. And then when we got out of school, and after we got back here, we had town teams. The church had Amden's team, and they had a baseball team and a
John,
basketball.
he didn't say so, but he set a track record that stood at the school up here for many, many years until just recently.
We'll talk about that, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the one, what did you set the record for?
I ran a 440 and tough race and to run as fast as you could that far.
And you held the school record?
Till
I
just recently.
I can't remember, I think it was 49 seconds for a quarter mile. And, I had lots of sports. We traveled around some, but then the war came and gas was rationed, and so kind of slowed down the traveling. But we'd get the farmers, they could get quite a bit of gas, and they'd donate gas. And for a couple of years there, we went in cars to the ball games, and sugar was rationed, gas was rationed, tires was rationed, and a lot of that kind of stuff.
Because of the war?
Yeah. And then several of the other guys got deferments because they'd took you right out of high school, take you back then, but helping on the ranch. And I went ahead and went to school, took a chance on being drafted, and I graduated in the 20th of May, and the 15th of June I was up in boot camp in Farragut. And then Ross came back the next year and finished high school, and then he was drafted. All those guys were drafted. John Park, he never did go. He had a broken elbow, was crooked. He's good in sports and everything, but they wouldn't take him. And I went to school in San Diego, radar school, and then immediately went out on a aircraft carrier and spent the rest of the war in the South Pacific. And then when we come back, why, that's when we started the town teams and the sports and dancing. Dancing was a big thing back then. So I always thought that one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was not going to college. And That's, and now so it's more than important than ever. And I went to Moscow for I can't remember.
Artificial inseminating.
I went to artificial inseminating school. You had to go to college for a couple of months, I guess, wasn't it? And I went through there, and that was part of the things I was doing to make a living was artificial insemination. The cattle there. There are lots of dairies here then, and during the Depression, it was really tough times, and we were in the sheep business, and we got by a little better than most people. And I remember your granddad. They lived up there, and they was having a hard time in milking cows and farming. And then some of the people out there was working for the WPA. It was a workman deal. It's not like it is just now. If you get out of work, you go down and they give you a check. They had to work for it. They built the Wood River Dam. They had out on the desert all these lakes that they had rock walls and stuff. And then they had a program with the CCCs, and they were the Forest Service. And Delisle Pippin, you remember him? He was in the CCCs up in northern Idaho. So that was
one of the very few outdoor toilets that that they built.
Oh yeah.
And because it's set in cement, and they haven't been able to pull it up
to
and
get
take
it out,
to stone.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was built by WPA on that.
And I remember when we were kids, if we got up so we could work, everybody went out and tried to get a job. They're doing anything and everything. When we got married, I always figured it was a partnership deal. And the wife, when I was out doing other things, she did part of the milking the cows and helped with all that, raising the kids. And she'd like to do things that I like to do. So we had, well, in March we'll have 70 years we've been married.
Is that
I think it'll be fine.
So,
wow, that's pretty good. 70 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more time married than not married, huh? So if you were to give some students in high school advice now, what would you tell them?
To go to college and keep your nose clean. You know, this drugs is a horrible thing. And don't be afraid to get a little sweat on your brow. We've always been hard-working people, and it never hurt us a bit. So, well, that's quite a few things I'm pretty proud of. I'm proud I went to the service and went to the war. I'd sure hate to do it again. And then I went out and worked at the atomic plant. I had a good job and kept farming and helped my parents out on weekends and all with the range. And after I got the range, I developed a lot of water and got a grazing plan, and we moved, well, Carey did, moved a 10 by 40 old trailer up there, and we made a cow camp out of it. And we moved up there in the summer sometimes and stayed up there and done all that work. And I've had quite a few people tell me, well, what do you do up there? There's nothing to do. And I said, well, when you got 150 cows and 10 horses and 6 miles of fence to keep up, there's plenty to do. So and I always tried to treat people like I would like to be treated. And I've kind of been one of my mottos all through the years. So, well, we lived down here on the old orchard place for a while. And then
After we were married and we came up here.
Oh, okay.
Before we moved into this house for a year.
yeah, Dad bought that ranch down there that Santa Rosa has now, and he had a bunkhouse there, and for the year or two after he was married, we lived there. And then we bought half of her dad's place in Richfield, and we spent, what, 3 years in Richfield?
I think it was only about 2, maybe it was 3.
There.
And Daddy was killed when we
Yeah,
came back here.
her dad was killed. We farmed together, and then we stayed there for about a year, and it didn't work out with her mother, and so we came back up here, and I went to work in 1960. I herded sheep for my dad out on the desert, and we were going to get another band of sheep.
That's on a break that you had taken from working at the atomic plant, though. You came in and did that.
Yeah, that was before you. Yeah.
You went to work at the atomic plant and then came in and put you.
And then the sheep business was getting kind of rough, and my brother was helping on the ranch, so we decided it wasn't quite enough for us on the whole place, so I decided to get a job. And I looked around and I had several pretty good opportunities. And I almost went to Montana to breed cows professionally, but we had crops to do here. They wanted me right now when they found out. Finally decided who they wanted. So we didn't go there. And then I went over to the atomic plant. That was paying more money than anywhere. And I worked there for 30 years. And I retired out of there, and then come and took over the cattle, and and helping my dad to there and farming. So I never did really get around to retired.
Retired so you could work full time?
Kind of like your dad.
Yeah.
Well, we had 6 boys, and we lost one in a car wreck, and the others, Rick went into the service and stayed in for his 20 years, and the oldest boy went to Nevada.
He went to the Navy first.
Yeah, he went to the Navy, and then he went down there and worked in the mines, got a real good job and retired out of there. And Gary was a hippie, and he went all over the country and finally ended up in Boise as a mechanic in the sugar factory down at Caldwell. Brock, he went down and worked in Nevada a lot, worked around different places.
He was in the Army, went and worked on Nike missiles in Germany.
Yeah, that's right. He did. He went to service, and he went to school down in Phoenix, and then he went to the service, and then he went to Germany, and he worked on the Nike missiles, and then he came back here, and he works around here, and he helps us with the ranch here now, runs the ranch. Oh, and Kim, the youngest boy, all he wanted to do was be a cowboy, and he went to Rexburg to school at ranch management school. He ended up over in Wyoming on a big ranch, and he got hurt. I don't know for sure what happened, but his horse come in and he didn't, and he was in a coma for about a week. And he come out of it, and he was affected his left side a little bit, wasn't his left side, and they started him right off like he's in the first grade. And
he was working for an insurance company that owned the ranch, and they put him through school for drafting of what he did, and then he ended up going into computerized drafting with the power company in Fort Collins. Then they came back here and he got into the same program for Idaho Power, and that's where he's been ever since. As a computer analyst.
Computer specialist. But
we should back up that Jack also was in the Army.
4 of the boys were in the Army. And my father was in World War I. He was in France. Had quite a military background also. That's about it, I guess. I'm Ray Baird. I graduated from Carey High School.